The newest generation of the most illustrious son of San Jose dos Pinhais has been born. Yes, the new generation Brazilian-built Audi Q3 with two body styles. This one you're seeing here is the Sportback, which even has a profile quite similar to the previous generation. But when you see the regular Q3 SUV, let's say, you can really tell we're talking about an all-new generation, or almost all new. We'll get into that in just a moment. This is Audi's new design language here. With these sharp headlights that we've already seen on cars like the A5, we'll talk about the A5 in just a bit. Green colors, Sage. And that's one of the cool things about Audi. Audi keeps offering colors like progressive red and shades of blue. Really cool, right? Always to draw attention to the Q3, which is a young car within Audi. Right, we saw it, and we're also going to talk about that in a bit. With two special guests, Rodrigo Francis and Hector Vieira from Acelerados, that promising channel with real talent, I'll give you this spoiler. But compared to the A5, for example, which has the 2.0 EA888 5th generation engine here, we still have the 4th generation one. The Q3 is a car more aimed at the Generation Z audience. Yes, good-looking, trendy professionals from big urban centers between 30 and 35 years old. Of course, they'll need to have between 390 and 400,000 reais, maybe 450. That's how much the new Q3 costs, always with the new engine. 258 horsepower, 27 more horsepower than the previous generation, always with 38 kilos of torque, 3 kilos more than the previous generation, 0 to 100 in 5.9 seconds, right? So, does that remain one of the main arguments for the Q3? When we compare it with the German competition, especially the X1, right, which is also a domestically produced car that sells a lot and is only front-wheel drive with 204 horsepower, more or less in the same price range. Therefore, Audi, which is worth remembering, is the newest entrant in Formula One, right? Has a differential compared to BMW, but not compared to Mercedes. Really bets on this sportiness. You can see here the 19-inch satin wheel, right? Audi Sport wheels. Look, it has the Audi Sport logo here. I think it deserved a slightly bigger wheel. A 20-inch wheel here would look nice. The Sportback body itself is something the X1 doesn't offer, and the Q3 still has its usual strengths. Right, one of them is the trunk. You see it's a car over 4.50 meters, almost 4.60 meters long, so you do get good trunk space here. With the seat all the way back, it reaches 480 liters, and with the seat moved forward, it goes over 500, almost 600 liters. And the dimensions are identical, right? Both in the Sportback body and in the SUV. But another thing I've always found really cool about the Q3 is this right here. Look, you come here. In the back seat, by the way, there are two interior color options, right? You can have the interior in cream leather or black leather with any exterior color. You don't need to match, everything is interchangeable. But look, you have the split rear seat, right? The backrest here, and you can adjust both the distance and the backrest angle, right? So you can have a configuration that prioritizes either cargo or passengers. This level of flexibility isn't that common in this segment. But it's when you enter the virtual cockpit of the new Q3 that you'll see the biggest difference compared to the previous generation. It's Audi's own virtual cockpit. Here it comes, a 12-inch big screen, an 11-inch big screen. You even have the layout here, including colors that remind you of a Formula One car, right? It's different. You can even pair the navigation here in full screen. The flat-bottom steering wheel, right? It's already a next-generation Audi product, something you used to see in the A5, right? Now, both the dashboard and the steering wheel are also available in the Q3. The logo now in this cleaner style, right? The Audi logo has been updated. And by the way, the rear logo is illuminated. That's really interesting too. But the big ergonomic revolution happening here is exactly this bar, right? The gear selector here is a fixed bar, a button. You can see that this whole part doesn't move with the steering wheel, right? Let's put it back upright, because if we put it in reverse here, we'll end up in the lake. And the turn signal itself works the same way here. Look, it's a little button. Audi is proposing a revolution in the turn signal. Will it work? We'll find out soon. But anyway, it's clear that Audi is trying to capitalize on its involvement with Formula One, this sportiness, the car's positioning, to become a slightly bigger player again. So Audi, even with local manufacturing, ended up falling far behind BMW itself, which is the market leader here, nationally in volume, but even falling behind brands that don't have manufacturing in Brazil, like Volvo itself. And of course, it's also necessary to hold back and counter the wave of Chinese rivals. I think the dynamic behavior of this car is its main argument, and I'm not going to just talk about it, I'm going to show it to you in action. Climb up on the big roof, the result of hard dieting and training, and let's get going. We'll return here for final thoughts. Man, what a collab, look at this. I'm already making my debut here, my dear Hector Vieira from Acelerados. Man, but we're not rivals, it's just the car that's rivals with Acelerados. It looks boxy, right? It couldn't be Acelerados.
You can't get distracted, right? You just can't get distracted.
Imagine, yeah, we had 5 minutes of fighting without losing our friendship first for it to work out. And Rodrigo França, who's already a regular on the channel, will also bring the perspective of an Audi owner. Explain why you're about to complete 10 years with your Audi S3 França, and maybe later I'll want to hear your impressions if this Q3 doesn't move your heart a little, especially with 158 horsepower. Let's go.
That little acceleration of yours already got me thinking,
Look,
because the S3 obviously is a car with almost 300 horsepower, right? I've had it since 2017 actually, and it's a 2016 model. And honestly, for me, it's hard to find a good cost benefit in a sports sedan, right? In this case, it's different from what we have here. So that's why I haven't changed cars until today, but who knows, right? The manufacturers have a lot of offers out there. Maybe I'll change my mind by the end of this video.
let me give a compliment here. Look, it's on the preset Grenell Rev. Very good, it's totally supported. Let me select the dynamic mode here, which is how we usually drive anyway. I'll tell you, my dear Hector Bonilla, I like the turn signal setup here with a button instead of a lever. It seems to me that usually when the manufacturer tries to reinvent things, I remember when BMW, for example, invented the turn signal as a button on the thumb, and Ferrari has done that too. Usually when the manufacturer tries to reinvent things. Tries to reinvent the wheel, they get it wrong, but here, let me tell you, it feels just right. I think Audi managed to do what nobody could in 100 years of the automotive industry, which is to improve the turn signal.
So I think that actually this decision to improve these buttons, right? The button to open and unlock the door, the turn signal button. It must be one of the hardest decisions that car manufacturers have to make because they keep using the same hardware, the same buttons, the same levers for 20, 30 years.
Certainly, and the...
Volkswagen will maintain its brand identity even with the Golf.
Yeah, no, so certainly, oops, oh, but look, I praised it too soon. I accidentally turned on the wipers here by mistake. Yeah, I put it in dynamic. The gear shift is here too. It's interesting. It stays as a static satellite, right? Look, I'm going to change lanes here so you can see. Look, I turned the steering wheel. Whoa, and this whole piece here stays still. Yeah, the Q3 needed it, right? It needed a boost. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, especially now at 390,000 reais, it's just slightly above the X1 based on the prices I saw.
Yes, which is the only one that offers all-wheel drive and more power,
But that's not all, right?
A positioning similar to the A5 versus the 3 Series, right? Yes?
But there are a bunch of other cars, right, in this price range now with new competitors that also, whether the premium brands want to hide it or not, it's still in the consumer's mind, right? These brands, anyway, these newcomers, right? Chinese newcomers.
It was even said right by the Audi marketing team, like, we're positioning this car for the guy who, well, they didn't say it literally, but like someone who's made it in life enough to move on from a Chinese car, right? So this man, there's a really big volume today of mid-sized Chinese SUVs from 250 to 300,000, and this car here would be the step above, right? And so it needs to offer a lot, you know? One thing I think Western automakers need to offer is, well, first of all, sportiness, right? You have 0 to 100 in 5.9 seconds here, faster than the Golf GTI, which costs more. It's the Evo 4 engine, right? The E8 Evo 4, which is the same as the GTI.
It should, huh? And me too. It's funny.
Right, because the A5 is already the Evo 5, right? It has more power. That's why Marginal got a bit jammed up here. When I arrived in Sao Paulo in 2006, I attributed 70% of Sao Paulo's traffic problems to broken down combis. Nowadays,
If you want...
it wasn't for me. What a scare, man.
If you want to carry out an attack in Sao Paulo, you just place 10 broken trucks at strategic points in the city and it comes to a halt. Exactly.
You don't even need to hack the city's system.
With 10 trucks at strategic points, you could lock down Sao Paulo.
But getting back to the point, yeah, it really offers or proposes much more sportiness, you know, than the average Chinese car, let's say. Man, this tiny steering wheel has flat edges on the top and bottom. But I was saying before I was interrupted by the traffic, it's the sound system, right? Branded sound is something that most Chinese cars, let's say like the Song Pro, Song Plus, Haval H6 we just saw here, don't really have. Its basic sound system is kind of disappointing for those who care about that, you know, and that's one of the things that sets this car apart. Another thing I thought was cool about this gear selector here is that it really cleans up our glorious center console. But
it doesn't have lane keeping assist, right? No lane centering, it just has lane departure warning, you know? In other words, it's those little drawbacks that sometimes can make...
You say, I turn this off. It's the first thing I do whenever I get in any case.
I hate it too, but does the average consumer do that as well? I can't say for sure how much this might appeal to the consumer, right? You who are showing off that this car almost drives itself hot-ass flights. Yes, so...
I think you picked up on a really good point, and you can also see here on this camera the new interface, right? It's the first car that comes with this new layout. Let me try to change it here. Look, the view to show, look. Cool, this car is nice.
Does it mirror Waze 2 or just Max?
They said it mirrors Waze 2. But look, the classic Audi tachometer now has a white background.
The colors are from the Formula One car?
Actually, that's true.
Okay, good point.
Everything aligned, man, with the brand positioning, but what are we talking about?
We're talking. I mentioned Hadas. You said I picked up on something.
I think more and more, man, the Brazilian market, and we're really used to it, right? Because the consumer, this, the Brazilian, that, with all these arrivals, I'll use the term newcomers. Newcomers, we're going to have a market that's more and more segmented, right? And we see this a little in other words, there will be less and less of the consumer, the Brazilian, because now, for example, what is Audi looking for? The guy is a successful family man. That's another cool thing, right? I'm gonna tease the marketing folks at the car companies a little bit. They said, no, this car here, the target is Generation Z, 30 to 35, yeah. And then they showed a commercial with a DJ, an influencer, and so on. First in advertising, if the target is 35, the actors are 25. Yeah, the guy playing the 35-year-old is actually 25.
No, and just let me make a parenthesis. In the presentation, they're calling this person from 30 to 35 Gen Z, so that means I'm Gen Z.
Yeah, and you have 400 grand to spend on no, that's the point. Like, who's gonna buy this car? Whoever has 400 grand is already in the 40-50 age group, come on. It's like back when the Cobalt was launched, the folks from Chevrolet's Max called it the Victorious Dad. But yeah.
But the guy who, that's it, look.
The guy who is this victorious dad, Jesus, he sees himself in this generation. That's the problem. He used to put...
It's aspirational. It's totally aspirational.
He thinks he's still that party guy, whatever, and suddenly he's not.
No, and he wants to wear clothes that make him feel that way, right? Exactly. But I always say I dress like an old skater, right? Yeah, right? Yeah.
Pair on the 5th.
Exactly. But the point is, just to finish my thoughts, so... It isn't anymore, right? Who is the SUV consumer? I mean, what kind of SUV consumer really values sportiness and driving dynamics? And isn't that concerned about electrification? You're narrowing it down more and more, right?
Let me add something to your thoughts, because the other day we recorded on our Accelerados show the Don't Compare segment, and I did this research using Quattro Rodas magazine, checking the price table. Do you know how many versions, not just models, but total versions of SUVs exist in the Brazilian market today? Just SUVs from 100,000 to 300,000 reais, guess a number.
Counting versions 5, 100, 150.
180.
Look how good my instinct was, but it's a lot.
Counting SUV versions from 100 to 300,000 reais, if you take the range from 160 to 180, there are 32. What do I mean by that? Yeah, and now I want to hear your opinion. Yeah, the market has never had so many car options like this, right, in the Brazilian market. But at the same time, we know that everything is kind of like, there's not much distinction from one SUV to another, right? So many brands, right? So isn't that a paradox? We've never had so many car options to buy, but at the same time, they're all very similar to each other.
Yeah, that's exactly what traditional automakers are betting on. I remember Daniel Ricciardo talking about his tough time at McLaren, and at one point he stopped looking at the data. If it's not paralysis by analysis, you start analyzing so much that you get paralyzed. My God, I want to buy an SUV for 200 to 250,000 reais. If you start breaking it down too much, yeah, you go crazy. And then more and more the difference, for example, we were here the week after the GT event. Volkswagen with this Legend platform, GTI, GLI, GTS, Toyota with Gazoo Racing, and Audi, right? You see the car comes with Audi sport wheels, performance package, and everything else. Yeah, the big difference, what do these traditional automakers have that all the Chinese ones don't? Above all, history, right? So the more you can create this emotional connection with your history, that's how you'll guarantee your little slice of this increasingly divided market, which actually in the end is a sign of the Brazilian market maturing, right? Yeah, we're simply becoming as segmented as Western Europe has historically been, as the United States is, and so on.
And I'll say more along those lines. Here's another thought. We're here in Sao Paulo, right? Sao Paulo is a place that has, 40 good neighborhoods for you to live in. The guy who lives in that neighborhood, it's hard to convince him to leave that neighborhood. Have you noticed that? The guy says, if you're someone who moved neighborhoods in Sao Paulo, you'll know the guy who lived in Vila Madalena, he won't leave it for anything.
I've lived in Sao Paulo for 20 years, moving between 4 places, all within about 2 to 2.5 kilometers. I'm from the West Zone. Do you know why? It's the spot in Sao Paulo most like Porto Alegre, man.
But the point I'm making is this. The car, maybe what you guys are saying makes sense with so many options, but the guy says, no, I already have this style of car here that I like. I already know the brand. I already know where the buttons are. So if the automakers can really get these brand lovers right, get the guy, that's really a differentiator because like Hector already said, if you look at the price range or the safety features, whoa.
They put the capacitive button on the steering wheel.
But anyway.
But it's very similar.
You see how it is? So I know it is.
You might even increase customer loyalty.
That's it. I'm saying, what does the guy go for? If there's a launch in Moima, he's likely to buy, and it's the same thing. You're already kind of leaning into this sporty SUV thing that's important to you. So when there's a launch in that range, either price or car quality, you tend to stay loyal, you know? Yes.
We'll be back in a moment when the traffic clears up here so we can speed up a bit on Bandeirantes. Wow, power, look at this. Man. Yeah, this one. Well, S-Tronic, 7 gears, right? Dual clutch, I even think, bringing up another topic that's very important to us. Audi's own entry into Formula One naturally positions it as something more sporty, right? In the regular lineup, let's say, right? The guy who buys it, if you look at a picture from 6 years ago, Audi used to sell the Q3 with front-wheel drive and a 1.4 engine, 150 horsepower, right? Yeah, it doesn't really match anymore for a premium brand that has a Formula One team to sell this kind of product.
Right? Exactly. Actually, I think that in the future, they might have versions with a milder tune for this engine.
Even to compete in a wider price range, but they can't come in with this idea of a less powerful engine and better value, right, in terms of price. They have to come in strong with performance because that's the brand's ethos.
Look, you said Ectus, well done. The car has 38 kgs of torque, 3 kg more torque than the previous generation, and 258 horsepower. The previous one had 204 horsepower, right?
It's 7 more, that's what they said. Yeah, 27 more.
Right, 27 more, 27 more. You see here, for example, today the test drive, right? It won't include any mountain roads, nothing like that. That's why I'm already recording here on Bandeirantes, man. But look, let's do the lane change test. Man, you're here, small steering wheel, right? You see that the body doesn't roll. There's no Chinese SUV costing 300,000 Rs that does this.
That in Formula One that you were talking about, yeah, I think it's pretty clear. Audi's entry, because we as enthusiasts know about Audi's connection with motorsport, right? WEC, WRC, all the achievements in DTM 24 Hours of Le Mans. But for the general public, man, when you connect with Formula One, a sports product, yeah, you see Mercedes itself. I see Mercedes repositioning. Look at the last 10 years. It's changed.
Totally. The whole A family, A35, AMG, there's this overall AMGization of Mercedes, even the AMG 35 everywhere. It's very connected to Formula One, right? Flashy colors, right, on the interior.
You see, Chevrolet comes in with the Cadillac brand. Renault itself had Alpine. I mean, they see Formula One as a premium, top, sporty product. And then, obviously, you'll have customer relationships or technologies for all the cars, but the showcase is the sports car. In this
very sporty positioning of this version, the only thing that bothered me was Catimos. 19-inch wheels, right? I think the car deserved a bigger wheel. A 20-inch wheel, come on. My EC40 has 20-inch wheel S, right? Which is a car that's faster than this one because it has 408 horsepower, but it doesn't have the sporty aspirations that this one has. Visually, yeah, I thought it was a bit, just a little catamose.
Do you like this square steering wheel?
I like it, man. I always have my hands in this position on the steering wheel, you know? So I think someone who sometimes drives like this and all might find it weird, but for me, no, it doesn't change anything. I see a lot of hate for the yoke from Tesla, you know? That wouldn't really bother me.
Well, it matches with the virtual cockpit. From here, I can see that you really have a full view of the dashboard, you know?
Yeah, they're an 11-inch and a 12-inch screen. And yeah.
People should know the Formula One steering wheel is flat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it could be more. It's an element there.
Any more thoughts about Q3? No.
Not for now.
So let's move on to my final conclusions now. Final conclusions, I really needed a boost of motivation. The Q3 does come with a very competitive package. It even reminds me of the positioning of the A5 itself, you know, which arrived at the same price range as the equivalent 3 Series, but offered much more power. And four-wheel drive, and when we talk about four-wheel drive, that's Audi's term for all-wheel drive. You know, within the SUV segment, it's even more of a differentiator than it is within the sedan segment. I thought it was an excellent product. I think it's going to be much more competitive against the X1 than it was before. I think it's going to help Audi gain market share in Brazil. It's going to be the main one, you know, it always was, but the previous generation was already a bit worn out. The Q3 has the responsibility of being Audi's volume car in Brazil. It needs to be the best-selling Audi in Brazil. However, if I had 400,000 and walked into an Audi dealership and saw the Q3, I would immediately look away. To the side. To the A5, which costs 420,000 Rs, just 5 more, has 272 horsepower, a bigger trunk, more space in the back seat, lower center of gravity. It's lower, more fun to drive, and better looking. That's my opinion. What's yours? Let me know in the comments. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel. That always helps us a lot. And as always, thank you so much. Take care. A big hug. And one more thing, for the metallic paint, you paid $2 grand extra. That's money well spent. Thank you so much.